She was just a broke delivery girl, until a bullet meant for the city's most dangerous man tore through her shoulder. Now, as she bleeds in his arms, the Mafia boss who ordered death swears to save her life instead. Broken heart. It was supposed to be an easy drop-off, 3 minutes to the restaurant, 5 to the customer, tip if she was lucky. Then bed. Her shift at the coffee bar had already bled her dry. Her feet ached. Her phone buzzed with overdue reminders she couldn't afford to read. Just one more delivery, she told herself. One more than home. The alley opened toward West Kinsey. Streetlights shimmered on a row of sleek cars parked beside a building whose windows glowed gold. Trust, the name whispered across the glass in elegant script. She'd seen on her app before. Italian, 5-star, the kind of place where a single plate cost her entire week's groceries. She wasn't supposed to enter, only wait outside for a pickup. She took one step forward. That was when the world cracked. A gunshot, sharp, close, deafening. Pain bloomed in her shoulder like fire set loose under her skin. She dropped the delivery bag. It hit the pavement with a dull thud. The second shot never came. Her knees gave out, cold water soaking through her jeans as she collapsed. The phone slid from her hand and skidded into the gutter. For a heartbeat, she didn't know what had happened. The street tilted, lights smearing into streaks. Then she saw the red on her sleeve, warm and spreading. Her body shook so violently she almost didn't hear the footsteps pounding toward her. A voice cut through the rain, deep, controlled, threaded with command. "Who shot you?" She blinked up, eyes struggling to focus. The man towering over her was all sharp lines and dark shadows. Black coat, dark hair slicked back, eyes the color of storm glass. Those eyes locked on hers, steady, unflinching. I don't know," she managed. Her throat tasted of metal. He crouched beside her, movements precise, almost deliberate. The rain beaded on his shoulders, but he didn't seem to notice. One hand brushed her cheek, checking her pulse with a strange gentleness that didn't match his voice. "Stay awake." "I'm fine," she lied, and the world dimmed a little more. "No, you're not." He slipped an arm under her back, another beneath her knees. She tried to resist. Instinct panic, but he lifted her easily like she weighed nothing. The alley blurred into streaks of gray and gold as he carried her toward the restaurant's entrance. Behind the glass, warmth exploded. Light, noise, the sudden hush of people realizing something terrible had crossed their perfect evening. Crystal chandeliers flickered overhead. Perfume and garlic filled the air. A hostess froze mid-step, eyes wide. "Lock the doors," the man barked in Italian. "Now!" Someone obeyed instantly. The heavy click of deadbolts echoed across marble. "Get towels!" "Call Lucia." A waiter stumbled off, returning with a white cloth that turned crimson the moment he pressed it to Avery's shoulder. Pain ripped through her chest, sharp enough to tear a cry from her throat. "I know," the man said, lowering her into a leather booth. "I know it hurts. Look at me." She did, because those eyes, green-gray, burning, left her no choice. He pressed down on the wound with practiced hands. His movements weren't random. They were trained. She caught a glimpse of something under the sleeve of his coat. A watch too expensive, a scar near the wrist. Not a stranger to violence, her fading mind whispered. Around them, diners stared but didn't move. The restaurant had fallen into that strange silence that comes when fear meets authority. The man's voice, even low, carried the weight of obedience. "Ambulance?" someone whispered. "No ambulance," he snapped. "Marco, bring my car." Side alley. "Yes, boss," came the quick reply from somewhere behind. "Boss." The word struck through Avery's fog like a spark. He leaned closer, his tone shifting to something quieter, almost reassuring. "You're safe. Do you understand? I won't let you die in my restaurant." Her lips trembled. "Why?" "Because you're in the wrong place at the wrong damn time," he muttered. "And I intend to fix that." The lights blurred again. She could feel the world narrowing, sound folding in on itself. The clink of glasses, the murmur of frightened strangers, the steady rhythm of his voice. Moments later, another man appeared, broad-shouldered, black gloves already on. "Car's ready." The stranger scooped her up once more, ignoring her weak protest. The cold Chicago air slapped her face as the door opened to the alley. A black SUV idled there, engine humming. "Keep your eyes open," he said as he climbed inside with her. "Tell me your name." "Avery." "Avery Collins?" She nodded, or thought she did. "I'm Aleandro," he said. "Aleandro Vitali." The name rang somewhere in her fading consciousness. Vitali. Everyone in the service industry knew that name. The powerful restaurateur with rumors that trailed him like cigarette smoke. Some said he had ties to the underworld. Some said he was the underworld. She tried to focus, tried to breathe through the pain. "I didn't do anything," she whispered. "I know." His jaw tightened. "You saved me." Her brow furrowed. "What?" "That bullet wasn't meant for you," he said, voice low and certain. "It was meant for me." The SUV sped through wet streets, tires slicing puddles. City lights flashed across his face, gold, blue, red. He didn't look away from her even once. They turned into an underground garage where a man in scrubs waited beside a metal door. The car hadn't even stopped before Aleandro opened it, lifting her again. "Gunshot wound, left shoulder," he said in rapid Italian. "Through and through." The doctor nodded, already cutting fabric, cleaning blood, injecting anesthetic. Avery tried to flinch away, but Aleandro's hand caught hers, firm, grounding. "Stay still, Piccola," he murmured. "It'll be over soon." Tears slipped down her temples, hot against the cold skin. The smell of antiseptic filled her lungs. She wanted to ask who he really was, what danger she had fallen into, but the questions drowned beneath exhaustion. The last thing she heard before darkness claimed her was his voice, softer now, almost human. "You'll live, Avery Collins. I promise you'll live." And somewhere in the deep, shifting haze of pain and sirens far away, she wondered why a man who ruled Chicago's shadows cared whether a broke delivery girl lived or died. Because that was the night she bled in the arms of Aleandro Vitali. The night the bullet meant for a Mafia boss changed everything. Welcome back, my beautiful family and friends, to my YouTube channel. I have missed you all. Click subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're watching from, because tomorrow I will be giving you another story, just as interesting as this one, and you don't want to miss it. Now, back to the story. The world came back to Avery in fragments. Light first, then sound, then the slow burn of pain spreading through her shoulder. She tried to move and failed. Every nerve screamed in protest. A ceiling swam into view, white, sterile, too bright. The air smelled of antiseptic and metal. Somewhere nearby, water dripped, steady and patient, like a clock counting her heartbeat. Then came the voice. Low, smooth, Italian vowels wrapped around English words. "Stay still. You'll tear the stitches." Her eyes shifted toward the sound. He was there, the man from the alley, the one who had carried her through the storm and the gunfire. Aleandro Vitali. He sat beside the narrow cot, sleeves rolled to his forearms, the white of his shirt streaked faintly with her blood. His dark hair was damp, and a faint bruise shadowed the sharp line of his jaw. But his eyes, those impossible gray-green eyes, were steady, assessing, alive with something she couldn't name. "You're awake," he said, like it was a command, not an observation. Avery swallowed, throat raw. "Where am I?" "A clinic," he replied. "Private." The words sounded like a lie polished into truth. She turned her head, wincing. The room was small, one cot, one metal tray, a sink, a single light burning overhead. There were no hospital machines, no nurses, no monitors, just the faint hum of an air vent. The only sign of medical care was the older man in scrubs who stood in the corner, quietly packing up a blood-stained tray. Her pulse began to race. "You didn't call an ambulance." Aleandro's gaze flicked to her, unflinching. "No. Why?" He set aside the towel he'd been holding, folding it with mechanical precision. When he finally spoke, his tone was calm, too calm. "Because the police would ask questions I can't answer." That simple line landed like another bullet. She blinked at him, confusion and fear tangling together. "What questions?" "I got shot in the street." "That's not a crime." It is when the bullet was meant for someone else. Her stomach tightened. You're saying you were collateral? She stared at him. The rhythm of the dripping water filled the silence between them. Collateral, she repeated softly, testing the word on her tongue like poison. He sighed, leaning back in his chair. For a moment, his face softened, the hard edges of his features melting into something almost human. You shouldn't have been there, he said quietly. Wrong place. Wrong time. Her voice trembled. And you just what? Brought me here to fix your mistake. A flicker of something dangerous flashed in his eyes. I brought you here because leaving you there would have made it mine forever. The doctor approached, murmuring something in Italian. Aleandro responded in the same language, fluid and fast. She didn't understand a word, but the tone carried weight, respect, command, authority. When the doctor left, the door sealed with a soft click. Now they were alone. Avery stared at him. You talk like someone used to giving orders. I am. Restaurant owners don't sound like generals, she said, the bitterness sharper than she intended. His mouth twitched, not quite a smile, not quite a warning. You've done your homework. Everyone in the service industry knows you, she said. Vitali, the restaurants, the investors, the stories. He tilted his head slightly. What stories? That you built your empire out of ashes, she said. That your father ran with men who disappeared when the city got clean. That you were the one who made it all look legitimate. He didn't deny it. The silence stretched until she could hear her own heartbeat thudding in her ears. Then he spoke, quieter now, more dangerous for it. Rumors are like smoke, Avery. They only exist because something is burning. She swallowed hard. So what's burning now? Me. The answer was too direct. It left her breathless. Aleandro stood, crossing the room to pour water into a glass. His movements were careful, deliberate, as if he'd trained himself never to make a wasted gesture. When he handed it to her, his fingers brushed hers. Warm, steady, grounding. She took a sip, though her throat was dry from fear more than thirst. Thank you, she murmured. He looked almost surprised, then nodded once. You're welcome. The quiet pressed in again. She stared at him, searching his face for something beyond the mask. Guilt, regret, humanity. But he was unreadable, carved from control. Why me? She asked finally. Why save me when you could have just? Because, he interrupted, his gaze cutting into her, that bullet was meant for me. The words hit harder than the gunshot. For a moment, all Avery could do was stare at him, the edges of her mind spinning. She remembered the flash of the muzzle, the heat, the pain, and him appearing out of the darkness like he'd stepped straight from the bullet's path. You're sure? She whispered. Certain. She drew a shaky breath. Then whoever fired that shot was trying to kill me. He said it without hesitation, as if he'd already accepted that truth long ago. Avery gripped the edge of the blanket, knuckles white. And now they think they did. Aleandro's jaw tightened. For tonight, yes. She studied him, the sharp planes of his face, the faint shadow of exhaustion beneath his eyes. You look like someone who's seen this before. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small gold lighter. He flicked it once, flame dancing between them, then snuffed it out. Violence isn't new to me, he said finally, but I don't let it touch innocent people. Innocent, she repeated softly. You don't even know me. I know you were delivering someone else's dinner at midnight, in the rain, he said. That you're bleeding because of my name. That's enough. She tried to read him again, to find the truth behind the calm. But the only thing she found was conviction. You sound like someone who's used to being obeyed, she said. I sound like someone who's tired of burying mistakes. The room went quiet again. Somewhere outside, a car door slammed, muffled through the walls. The city never slept, not even for the wounded. Avery looked down at her bandaged shoulder. So what happens now? Aleandro met her eyes. Now you rest. Then, when you can think straight, you tell me everything you remember. I told you I didn't see who did it. Try again, he said softly. Sometimes the mind hides details until it feels safe. She stared at him, uncertain whether the command was comforting or terrifying. Safe, she echoed. With you. His lips curved slightly, a hint of something between irony and promise. For now, yes. She lay back, exhaustion pulling at her again. Through the haze, she watched him move, methodical, silent, checking her fore, adjusting the lamp. He wasn't gentle in the way most men tried to be. He was careful in the way soldiers were, precise, controlled, as if gentleness were a language he'd had to relearn. As sleep began to drag her under, she caught the faint sound of him speaking Italian under his breath. A prayer, maybe, or a curse. Her last thought before the dark claimed her again was not about pain, or fear, or even the bullet. It was about him, the man who refused to let her die, the man whose name made the city tremble, the man who said the bullet meant for him, had rewritten both their fates. The first thing Avery noticed was the light. Soft, golden, spilling across silk sheets and the pale walls of a room too beautiful to belong to real life. Lake Michigan shimmered beyond a wall of glass, gray, endless, alive. For a moment she forgot the blood, the clinic, the gunfire. She forgot the sound of her own heartbeat racing for survival. Then she moved, and pain reminded her. Her shoulder throbbed beneath the bandage, a sharp pulse of memory that dragged everything back. The restaurant, the stranger, Aleandro Vitali. She pushed herself upright, blinking at the spacious room. No beeping monitors, no hospital smell, just quiet, expensive quiet. On the table beside the bed sat a tray, a porcelain bowl, steam curling from the surface, and beside it, a folded napkin and a glass of water. The scent hit first, tomatoes, basil, something earthy. Home and danger in the same breath. You're awake. His voice came from the doorway. Avery turned. Aleandro leaned against the frame, dark sweater instead of the bloodstained shirt, sleeves pushed up, a contrast of rough hands and effortless grace. His eyes, that impossible green-gray, searched her face like he was reading more than pain. "How do you feel?" he asked. "Like I got shot," she rasped. A shadow of a smile crossed his face. "Fair." He walked in, setting a steaming cup of coffee on the nightstand. "Chef Lucia swears by tomato broth for recovery," he said. "She made it herself." "You have a chef?" Avery asked. He shrugged lightly. "I have a lot of things, like secret doctors and locked clinics." That earned her a glance, half warning, half amusement. "Eat," he said simply. Avery hesitated, then picked up the spoon with her uninjured hand. The broth tasted rich and simple, the kind of flavor that spoke of patience and history. She hated that it calmed her. When she looked up, he was sitting opposite her, forearms resting on his knees. Watching, not like a predator, but like someone making sure the world didn't fall apart again. Finally, he spoke. "There are a few things we need to make clear." Her pulse jumped. Rules, she thought. Of course there'd be rules. He held her gaze. "You can leave whenever you want," he said. "No one here will stop you. The door isn't locked." She blinked, surprised. "That's rule one. Freedom is the only thing worth staying for," he said. "Not something I take away." Something in his tone made her believe him, and that unsettled her more than if he'd lied. "Rule two," he continued. "Your phone stays with you. No one touches it. Not me, not my people. You'll have privacy, but Valentina, my attorney, may ask to scan it for evidence. Only if you agree." Her eyebrows lifted. "That's weirdly respectful. I've had enough people dig through my life," he said. "I don't return the favor." She studied him. "You act like this happens often." He didn't answer. "And rule three," she pressed. That was when his expression shifted. Softer, but heavier. "Rule three," he said quietly. "I protect you. At any cost." The words shouldn't have comforted her, but they did. For a heartbeat, the weight of them filled the room like a vow sealed in blood. Avery set the spoon down. "What?" His eyes flickered, 1,000 unsaid things passing behind them. "Because someone fired a bullet at me and hit you instead. That makes me responsible." She wanted to argue, to tell him that she didn't need protection from anyone, but the truth was she hadn't felt safe in years. Not from bills, not from landlords, not from a hollow uncertainty that stalked every paycheck. And now this man, wrapped in secrets and power, was offering her something she didn't even know she'd been starving for. Still, she forced a smirk. You do realize I could be the world's worst house guest. Then I'll have the world's most patient host, he said. And there it was again, that quiet control, as if the universe bent slightly around his will. The room drifted into silence. Only the low hum of the city outside reminded her the world hadn't stopped. She looked out through the window at the lake like a sheet of liquid steel. You really live here alone? He nodded once. Alone is safer. For who? She asked. He didn't answer. When she looked back, he was studying the skyline like it belonged to him. Maybe it did. Every story she'd ever heard about Aleandro Vitali painted him as a man with half of Chicago in his pocket. A restaurateur, yes, but also the quiet storm behind half a dozen rumors that never made the papers. A man who'd turned a criminal dynasty into an empire of fine dining and fear. But here now he just looked tired and dangerous and human. She should have been terrified. Instead, she found herself asking, what happens next? Now, he said, you heal. You tell me everything you remember. She nodded slowly, replaying the chaos in her mind. The rain, the flash of light, the metallic taste of blood. And then something surfaced. A small detail, jagged and sudden. I saw something, she said. Aleandro turned to her. What kind of something? Her breath caught. A tattoo. On the shooter's wrist. A black chess piece. A rook. The air changed. He didn't move at first, just stared at her, unblinking. Then, like a fuse lit behind his eyes, tension rippled through him. His hands clenched. The calm that had carried through every word vanished, replaced by something raw and electric. Where? He asked, voice like gravel. Left wrist, she said quietly. He was holding the gun, and when the sleeve slid back, I saw it. Aleandro's jaw locked. He stood, pacing once toward the window, back turned to her. For a second, she thought he might actually hit the glass. When he finally spoke, his voice was a low growl. That mark belongs to someone who shouldn't breathe in my city. She'd never heard hatred sound so cold. Not shouted, not wild, just controlled fury, the kind that could kill without raising its tone. Avery's mouth went dry. You know him. He turned, eyes like steel. I know what that mark means. What does it mean? He hesitated. Then, it means the war I buried 5 years ago just came back to life. She stared at him, heart pounding. And me? What does that mean for me? His answer came slow, deliberate. It means you're not just a witness anymore. You're part of the story. Silence swallowed the room again, heavier this time. Outside, the lake stretched endless and indifferent, reflecting a sky that promised more storms. Avery felt the chill crawl up her spine. Somewhere deep inside, she knew that from the moment she'd seen that rook tattoo, her life had split in two, the one she'd been living and the one that belonged to Aleandro Vitali's world. He stepped closer, voice steady once more, but edged with something almost like sorrow. Eat your broth, Avery. You'll need your strength. She didn't argue, because even as fear coiled in her chest, another truth was sinking in. Whatever this man was, criminal, savior, or something in between, his world had already claimed her. And as thunder rolled faintly across the lake, one question refused to leave her mind. When danger was the face of the man who saved your life, would you still let him protect you? Rain fell again that night, harder, colder, sharper than before, as if the city itself sensed what was coming. Chicago's skyline burned through the fog like steel and fire, but inside Aleandro Vitali's penthouse, the air was thick with something heavier than smoke. Secrets had weight, and this one was crushing them both. Avery sat at the long marble counter, laptop open, coffee untouched. Her hands trembled over the keyboard as lines of code scrolled past. Somewhere between the hospital and here, she'd stopped being a victim and started helping him dig. They were tracing an order. Her order, the one that had gotten her shot. Aleandro stood behind her, coat draped over his shoulders, his voice low but steady. Start from the beginning. You said the app pinged you near 11:30. Yes. Avery's voice cracked. Same customer as last week. Same address. I thought it was a repeat order. And you didn't notice the tag? I thought it was a restaurant ID code. He stepped closer, scanning the screen. It's not an ID. It's a data key, encrypted transfer. Someone used your delivery profile as a courier. Her stomach dropped. So, I was delivering what? Money. He shook his head. Worse. His fingers danced across the keyboard, typing in commands too fast for her to follow. The screen flickered, resolving into a spreadsheet of transactions, each one labeled with the same hidden key. Russian bank routes, offshore accounts, and one name. Detective Daniel Crow. Avery stared. He's police. Aleandro's jaw tightened. Not anymore. The words carried venom, the kind of certainty born from old wounds. Crow. The same detective whose name had surfaced years ago in whispers about Vitali operations. The man who'd sworn to clean up the city, but whose hands were always too clean for the messes he made. He's been laundering money through my restaurants, Aleandro said, eyes locked on the screen. Using shipments, fake invoices hiding behind my name. Her chest tightened. And the data he sent, it was proof. Exactly. The kind that could bury him and anyone connected to him. Avery felt sick, so he used me to move it without anyone noticing. He looked at her, voice softening. And when the drop went wrong, he panicked. Had someone silence the courier. Her breath caught. Silence me. Yes. The word fell heavy, final. Outside, thunder cracked. A flash of light splitting the lake horizon. Avery shut the laptop and pushed it away. Then we take this to the FBI. To the press, someone. Aleandro gave a dry, humorless laugh. You think the Bureau doesn't already know? They're feeding off the same money, Avery. Crow has friends in every suit from here to D.C. She glared at him. Then what? We just hide? Pretend none of this happened. His eyes lifted to hers, and she wished she hadn't asked. We don't hide, he said. We hunt. That was the moment she understood why people whispered his name. Aleandro Vitali wasn't loud. He didn't threaten. He simply decided, and the world obeyed. By the next morning, the penthouse had transformed. Maps spread across the dining table, names marked in red ink. Marco, Aleandro's cousin, brought files, burner phones, encrypted radios. Valentina, sharp in a black suit, coordinated from the corner like a general before battle. Avery watched them move, precise and silent. Professionals, soldiers of the shadows. And yet, in the center of it all, Aleandro stood calm, a storm contained inside a man. When he turned to her, his tones softened again. You don't have to be here for this. Her answer came faster than she expected. Yes, I do. He studied her, maybe weighing her courage, maybe recognizing the stubbornness he'd once lived by. Then understand something, he said. When we start this, there's no turning back. I've already been shot, she said. I think turning back's off the table. Something like pride flickered in his eyes. Then you stay close. Always. By nightfall, the city began to bleed secrets. Avery's phone buzzed with a number she didn't recognize. She answered, and the voice on the other end froze her blood. Avery Collins. The tone was low, confident. Tell your boss I'm done with games. He gives back what he stole, or I start taking from you. Who is this? The voice chuckled softly. You'll find out soon enough. Ask your brother if he likes surprises. Click. Her heart stopped. Ethan, she whispered. She turned, voice trembling. Aleandro. He knows about Ethan. In an instant, the calm broke. He was already moving, phone in hand, barking orders in Italian. Marco vanished through the elevator, Valentina on his heels. The lights dimmed, replaced by the red glow of the city through rain-streaked glass. Avery stood frozen. They can't find him. He's just a kid. Aleandro's hand landed on her shoulder. Not gentle, but grounding. They touched your family, he said, voice low, trembling with barely contained fury. Now they've bought a war. Hours blurred into violence. Aleandro's network moved like ghosts, tracking calls, following signals, hitting warehouses under the cover of thunder. The night filled with gunfire and sirens that never reached the papers. Avery sat in the SUV, heart hammering, as they pulled up to an abandoned freight yard. The rain had turned the ground into black mud, reflecting flashes of blue from the horizon. Aleandro stepped out, his coat snapping in the wind, every inch the legend the streets feared. Stay in the car, he said. Like hell, she muttered, climbing out behind him. They found Ethan tied to a chair inside one of the storage rooms, bruised but breathing. Two men stood guard. They never saw Aleandro coming. The first went down with a single shot. The second barely raised his gun before Aleandro had him by the throat, eyes burning with something primal. "Who sent you?" he growled. "Crow," the man gasped. He said to deliver a message. "What message?" "That everyone has a price, even you." Aleandro's hand tightened. The man's eyes bulged, then rolled back as Aleandro dropped him to the floor like discarded trash. He turned to Avery, breathing hard. "Is he okay?" She was already kneeling by her brother, cutting the ropes with shaking hands. "He's alive," she whispered. "Thank God he's alive." Aleandro crouched beside them, one gloved hand brushing a streak of blood from her face. His voice softened, but his eyes were still ablaze. "They'll come again. Crow won't stop until I'm buried." Avery looked up at him, trembling but defiant. "Then don't give him the chance." He nodded once, the decision already made. "We end this. Tonight." Outside, lightning split the sky. The storm roared, echoing the chaos that now had no way back. Avery watched Aleandro's silhouette against the burning skyline, a man made of shadows and vengeance. And though fear clawed at her chest, another truth took hold. She trusted him now, not because he was good, but because he was real. And real, in their world, was rarer than mercy. As the night thundered with gunfire, betrayal, and blood, one question burned in Avery's mind. When justice hides in the dark, do you fight like the innocent, or learn to strike like the guilty? The safe house was supposed to be silent, hidden, guarded, untouchable. It sat on the outskirts of Chicago, a two-story brownstone tucked between forgotten warehouses, the kind of place no one would look twice at. Inside, Avery paced the narrow hallway, every creak of the floorboards making her nerves prickle. Aleandro had left 2 hours earlier to meet with Valentina and the others. "Just a few hours," he'd said, pressing his hand gently to her shoulder. "Stay inside. Marco's close if anything happens." But safety had become a fragile illusion in her world. Rain rattled against the windows. The clock ticked, steady and too loud. Avery sat on the edge of the couch, phone clutched tight in her hand, waiting for a message that didn't come. Every sound outside, the hum of tires, the shift of wind, sent her heart sprinting. And then the lights flickered. Once, twice, gone. Darkness swallowed the room. Avery froze. Her breath came sharp, ragged. The hum of the refrigerator died, and in that sudden silence, she heard it, the soft scrape of a door hinge somewhere downstairs. Someone was inside. She grabbed the nearest thing, a fireplace poker, her hands slick with sweat. Footsteps moved below, slow and deliberate. 1, 2, 3 pairs, maybe more. "Marco," she whispered, barely audible. No answer. The living room door shuddered, then exploded inward. Masked men flooded the room, black-clad and armed. The first lunged at her. She swung the poker with every ounce of terror she had. Metal cracked against the skull, sending him reeling. Another grabbed her wrist, twisting hard. She kicked, screamed, bit down on his arm until he roared and let go. Adrenaline blurred her thoughts. There was no strategy, only survival. She ducked behind the sofa as bullets tore through the walls, splinters flying. One man reached over to grab her. She jammed the broken end of the poker into his knee. He fell with a howl. The chaos was deafening. Then the front door burst open again, but this time it wasn't the enemy. Marco stormed in like a thunderclap. 2 handguns, 2 shots, 2 men down before they even turned. He moved with the lethal grace of someone born into the war they were fighting. Precise, cold, efficient. "Avery," he shouted. "Here," she yelled back, coughing through the smoke and dust. He found her crouched by the overturned couch, hair wild, blood streaking her sleeve. "You hurt?" "No, not mine," she gasped. They knew where I was." Marco's jaw locked. Then someone talked. He pulled her to her feet. "We have to move. Now." But as they ran through the back hall, Avery's eyes caught a glimpse of something. A blur of movement, a sleeve pulling back as one of the attackers stumbled through the rain-soaked doorway. The tattoo, black ink, bold and unmistakable, a rook chess piece glinting against pale skin. Her heart froze. "Marco!" she screamed. "It's him, the same Mark." Marco fired once more, hitting the wall beside the fleeing man, but the attacker slipped into the dark, vanishing into the storm. By the time the sirens echoed in the distance, the house was smoke and ruin. When Aleandro arrived, he didn't walk in, he stormed in. Rain plastered his hair to his face, his coat heavy with water, but the fury in his eyes burned hotter than any fire. He didn't speak at first. His gaze scanned the wreckage, the shattered glass, the bullet holes, the blood streaks on the walls. And then it landed on her. "Avery," he said, voice raw, "did they touch you?" She shook her head. "No, but they almost did." He exhaled once, hard, as if forcing air into lungs that had forgotten how to breathe. Marco handed him her phone, screen lit with a new message. A text. No name, no number, just words that sliced through the storm. "Trade the girl for the boy. Midnight. Come alone." Aleandro stared at it, unmoving. The muscles in his jaw tightened. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then quietly, dangerously, he said, "They think they can barter with my blood." He turned the phone over in his hand, knuckles whitening. "They're wrong." The way he said it chilled the air. He tossed the phone onto the table, where it landed with a dull thud. The silence that followed wasn't calm. It was the silence before a detonation. "Crow," he murmured. "He's behind this. The Rook Mark? That's his man. His message." Marco frowned. "We could set a counter trap." "No," Aleandro said. "He wants me alone. He'll give me alone." Avery stepped forward. "You can't go." He turned sharply. The storm outside flashed across his eyes. "Don't tell me what I can't do." His voice was still low, still calm, but the temperature of the room dropped. Even Marco took a step back. Avery's chest tightened. "They'll kill you, Aleandro." He met her gaze, and for the first time, she saw something beneath the rage. Fear. Not for himself. For her. "They already tried to kill me," he said. "Now, they're trying to take you to finish the job." He stepped closer until she could feel the heat of his breath, smell the rain on his coat. "I can't let that happen." His hand brushed her cheek, fingers trembling despite the fury. "I told you I'd protect you." "I meant it." The room filled with the sound of rain hammering the windows, thunder rolling like cannon fire in the distance. Avery wanted to argue, to tell him there was another way, but the look in his eyes told her there wasn't. Not anymore. This wasn't business. This wasn't strategy. This was war. Marco broke the silence first. "What's the plan?" Aleandro straightened. Every inch the man the city whispered about, the Dawn Reborn. "We find out where they're holding Ethan. We get him out. And then we burn Crow's empire to ash." His tone left no room for doubt. He moved toward the door, lightning illuminating the sharp outline of his face. Marco followed, checking his weapon. Avery called after him, voice breaking. "Aleandro, don't do this alone." He stopped at the threshold, rain roaring behind him. For a second, he didn't turn. Then, in a voice that carried both promise and prophecy, he said, "I was born alone, Avery. But tonight, I make sure no one else dies that way." The door slammed. Outside, the storm swallowed him whole. Avery stood frozen in the aftermath, the echoes of gunfire still ringing in her ears, the smell of smoke and rain thick in the air. Her phone buzzed once more, a single notification lighting the darkness. 12 a.m. Midnight was coming, and somewhere in the city, Aleandro Vitali was about to remind the world why his name once made grown men tremble. As the thunder rolled over the skyline, one question haunted Avery's thoughts. When love and vengeance burn in the same heart, which one survives the night? The rain had stopped, but the city still felt drenched in danger. The plan was simple, too simple, Avery thought. A fake delivery order, same app, same time, same kind of package that had gotten her shot the first time. Only this time, the customer wasn't expecting dinner. They were expecting a trap. She sat behind the wheel of a decoy delivery van, hands trembling slightly on the steering wheel. The address glowed on the dashboard. 192 Harbor Industrial Lane. A dead zone. Half the warehouses there had been abandoned for years. "You don't have to do this," Aleandro's voice came through the earpiece, low and steady, the voice of command wrapped in concern. "Yes, I do," Avery said. "I started this. I won't hide while you take every bullet from me." There was a pause, the kind that said more than words. Then, quietly, "Stay sharp, Piccola. They'll smell fear." She almost smiled. "Then let's hope they're allergic." The van rolled into the fog-choked district, tires crunching over gravel. Every instinct screamed at her to turn around, but her heartbeat kept time with the engine. She was the bait. The delivery girl turned decoy in a game she barely understood. As she stopped beside the designated warehouse, the silence pressed in. Too deep, too perfect. Then movement. A shadow near the loading dock. Another by the fire escape. The air itself seemed to tighten, the calm before a strike. "Aleandro," she whispered. "They're here. Wait for my mark." But the mark never came, because the first bullet did. It shattered the van side mirror, sparking chaos. Avery ducked down, glass raining over her as the windshield exploded. She rolled out the door, hitting the wet ground just as a second shot tore through the driver's seat. "Marco!" Aleandro's voice snapped through the comms. "Move in." The night erupted, gunfire echoing between steel walls. Figures in masks swarmed out of the shadows. Bullets tore through crates, flames sparked from ruptured barrels, and the air filled with the metallic taste of war. Avery crawled behind a rusted forklift, pulse pounding. She saw him then, the rook-marked assassin. Same black tattoo on the wrist. Same dead eyes. He aimed for her again, but before the trigger could pull, a blur of motion slammed into him from behind. Aleandro. He tackled the man to the ground, both of them crashing through a stack of crates that exploded in splinters. The gun slid across the floor. The assassin swung a knife. Aleandro caught his wrist, twisted, slammed it down. The blade clattered away. Marco and Valentina pinned down two others, exchanging gunfire with precision that turned the chaos into choreography. Then, out of the corner of her eye, Avery saw movement in the catwalk above. Crow. He wasn't hiding anymore. Detective Daniel Crow stood above them, gun drawn, his badge glinting in the flickering light of the fire spreading across the warehouse floor. "Well done, Vitali," he called, voice calm mocking. "Didn't think you'd use your little delivery girl as bait." "Clever." Aleandro turned, fury darkening his face. "It ends tonight, Crow." "Oh, it ends," Crow said, aiming his weapon. "Just not how you think." He fired. Avery screamed. Aleandro ducked, rolled, fired back. The catwalk's railings sparked as bullets hit metal. Smoke thickened, flames rising. The assassin lunged again, slashing wildly. Aleandro caught him mid-charge and shoved him straight into the wall of fire. The man went down screaming, the rook tattoo melting with his flesh. The smell of smoke, blood, and vengeance filled the air. Crow leapt from the catwalk, landing hard on the floor, guns still raised. "You think you're some kind of hero, Vitali," he snarled. "You've been laundering for me since you could walk." Aleandro's jaw tightened. "You use my family's name to build your empire. You use my businesses to hide your filth." Crow smirked. "Your father built that empire for me. You've been laundering Russian money your whole life. You just didn't know it." The words hit harder than the bullets. Aleandro froze. For a moment, the world stopped. The fire crackling, the rain hissing against the roof, Avery's breath caught mid-scream. "You're lying," Aleandro said, voice shaking. Crow's grin widened. "Oh, am I? You think the Vitali fortune came from wine and olive oil? Your father took dirty money and made it shine. You've been my favorite cleaner for decades, son." Something in Aleandro's eyes broke. All the years he'd spent building his name clean, all the blood he'd washed from his family's legacy, undone in a few sentences. The truth, or the weaponized version of it, was poison either way. Avery saw it, the flicker of doubt, the way his breathing faltered. "Don't listen to him," she shouted, stepping forward through the haze. "He's trying to break you." Crow raised his gun toward her. "And I think I just found your weakness." The shot never came. Aleandro's bullet did. It tore through Crow's chest, throwing him backward into the burning crates. He collapsed, coughing blood, laughter still bubbling in his throat. Too late, Vitali, he rasped. You can kill me, but you can't kill the truth. The fire climbed higher, flames reflecting in Aleandro's eyes as he stepped closer. For a moment, Avery thought he might shoot again, not out of anger, but out of the desperate need to erase the past. But he didn't. He just stared. Crow's last words hung between them like smoke. You think you're clean? Your father built the syndicate with Russian money. You've been laundering for years and didn't even know it. Then the detective went still. The warehouse groaned, flames licking at the roof. Marco grabbed Aleandro's shoulder. We have to go. Aleandro didn't move. His hand trembled, not from fear, but from something deeper. The kind of fracture that started inside the soul. Avery ran to him, coughing through the smoke. Aleandro. He turned to her, and for the first time since she'd met him, he looked lost. I built everything to make it right, he said quietly. All of it, and it was never mine to clean. She reached for his hand, gripping it tight. Then we find proof. Real proof. Together. For a heartbeat, the fury in his eyes softened, replaced by something fragile. Hope. He nodded once, pulling her toward the exit as the warehouse collapsed behind them, sparks falling like stars over the wreckage of everything he thought he was. They burst into the cold night, smoke curling into the sky. Sirens wailed in the distance, too late, as always. Avery turned back to the fire. It's over, she said. Aleandro looked at the burning building, the ashes of his past glowing in the dark. No, he whispered. It's just beginning. And as the fire devoured the last of the evidence, one question blazed brighter than the flames. When the truth burns down everything you've built, do you rebuild with love or rise again in vengeance? The smoke had barely faded when the truth began to rise. For days, Chicago buzzed like a city waking from a long nightmare. The Vitali name filled headlines, half in accusation, half in disbelief. But as Aleandro and Avery followed the evidence north, the noise of the city faded behind them, replaced by silence and determination. Their destination was Lake Geneva. The air there was different, colder, cleaner. The water spread out like glass, reflecting clouds that seemed untouched by all the chaos left behind. In a small lakeside cabin that once belonged to Aleandro's father, they pieced together what Crow had tried to bury. Avery sat by the fire, flipping through the encrypted files Marco had recovered from Crow's servers. These bank transfers, she said, pointing at the screen, they all tie back to shell accounts under Crow's wife's name. Offshore, hidden through your company, but controlled by him. Aleandro leaned against the wall, his arms crossed, shadows cutting across his face. He used my father's name as the front. She nodded. The syndicate wasn't yours. It was his. He stared at the screen for a long time, the reflection of the flames flickering in his eyes. All these years I thought I was cleansing a family sin, he said quietly. But I was cleaning his. Avery rose and crossed him. You couldn't have known. That's not the point, he murmured. The point is I believed I had to carry it. Every mistake, every death, I made it mine. She reached up, her hand brushing against his jaw, forcing him to look at her. Then maybe it's time to stop carrying it. He met her gaze, and for the first time since the night she fell bleeding into his arms, there was peace behind those eyes. Fragile, uncertain peace, but peace nonetheless. Finish the upload, he said softly. The world deserves to know what really happened. By morning, the story broke. The files hit every major network. Data dumps, confession tapes, financial trails that painted Crow as the true architect of the laundering scheme. The hero detective became a villain overnight. His connections, his partners, even the crooked politicians who had funded him, all exposed. And Aleandro Vitali's name? Cleared. The man once whispered about as Chicago's ghost Don became something else entirely, a man vindicated by truth. But Aleandro didn't celebrate. He didn't hold press conferences or smile for cameras. He watched the city's reaction from the quiet of the lake, coffee cooling untouched in his hands. Avery found him standing on the pier that evening, looking out over the silver horizon. The light made him look younger, like time had decided to give him back a few of the years it had stolen. You could go back, she said, stepping beside him. Reopen the restaurants. Rebuild what you lost. He smiled faintly. Maybe, but some things shouldn't be rebuilt. They should be reborn. Avery tilted her head. And what does that make you? He turned toward her then, the wind lifting strands of her hair. Someone trying to learn how to live without ghosts. She smiled. You're getting there. For a long while, they stood in silence, the water lapping softly against the dock. The firelight from the cabin flickered behind them, painting their shadows on the wooden boards. Then Aleandro reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small box. Not velvet, not ornate, simple, understated, the kind of thing that meant more because it didn't need to dazzle. Avery, he said quietly, you once asked me why I saved you. She nodded. You said it was because the bullet was meant for you. He took a slow breath, eyes searching hers. That was only half the truth. He opened the box. Inside was a silver ring, smooth, elegant, engraved with 2 words, Vivere Libero. Live free. You saved my life that night, he said. Not when you took the bullet, but when you refused to let me drown in what I thought I had to be. I've lived my whole life in cages of power, duty, and revenge. You made me see the door. Her throat tightened. Aleandro, I'm not asking for forever, he said. Just today, to start something real. Clean. Tears welled in her eyes, hot and uninvited. You sure you know what clean feels like? His smile deepened, soft and rueful. I'm learning. She took the ring from the box, feeling the cool metal warm against her skin. Vivere Libero, she murmured. Live free. He nodded. My father used to say those words every New Year's Eve. I never understood them until now. A gust of wind rippled across the lake, carrying with it the faint scent of rain and pine. Avery slipped the ring onto her finger, then looked back at him. So what now, Mr. Vitali? He laughed quietly, the first genuine laugh she'd heard from him. Rich, unguarded, real. Now, we live. No syndicates, no debts, no wars. Just peace. She tilted her head, smiling. You sure the city will let you have that? His eyes glinted with the same quiet danger that once ruled the streets. Let them try to take it. They both laughed then, not because it was funny, but because it was finally possible. As the sun sank lower, the lake turned to gold. For a man who had once owned everything but peace, this moment was more than victory. It was redemption. Later that night, as the stars blinked awake above the water, Avery sat by the cabin window, watching Aleandro sleep for the first time without a gun beside him. The world outside was still dangerous, still broken. But somehow, the fire between them had burned through the darkness instead of feeding it. She thought of the city, the same streets that had once bled under his name, now whispering a new story. One not of crime or vengeance, but of survival and love that refused to die. Because sometimes, the hardest wars weren't fought with bullets or blood. They were fought with forgiveness. Avery closed her eyes, the words Vivere Libero echoing in her mind. Live free. It wasn't just his legacy now. It was theirs. And as dawn broke over the quiet lake, one question lingered, one that every heart touched by fire must one day answer. When the past finally lets go, do you dare to live free? Or do you keep wearing the scars as your armor? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I'd really like to hear your opinion. Thank you for watching this story to the end. And if you enjoy stories like this, don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss the next one. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.